Okay, guys, today our lesson, we are going to start on chapter number 5. But before talking about the content, what I'm planning to do is that I'm going to teach you a skill set that is the last bit of skills that you'll learn for your SBQ. And this skill is known as the summary skill. Now, in your O-level examination, you will be given a full structured source-based question. And in your full source-based question, which is 35 marks, the last question is a 10-mark question. And that is what we call the assertion or the summary question. Okay, and today I'm going to teach you, and we're going to do a step-by-step to guide you along to how to answer it. And what we are going to do is that we are going to look at page 144 to 145, the sources that are used there, and I'm going to use it as an example to guide all of you to answer the source-based question on assertion. You already have the worksheet that was given to you via SLS. So what I want you to do is very, very simple. When you're having a lesson with me, I will be doing a screen sharing. I will be showing you, and you're going through the step-by-step. Pay attention to the instruction. Jot down the notes as we go along. After that, during part of the lesson, I will be giving you about maybe 10 to 15 minutes to work on the subsequent sources, and then I'll go through the answers with you. And then I will need you to complete your answers by writing a full-length so-called SBQ question E answer for these 4 sources that we are using. Okay, so without further ado, okay, make sure you have your worksheet with you. If it's a hard copy of your worksheet, then you take it out. That's for you to jot down your points. If yours is a soft copy, not to worry. Open it up on Word, open it up on Google document, and then you can annotate and do whatever that you need for your particular question. Okay, so now I'm going to share screen. I'm going to show you what are the things that we're going to do today. Okay, now, okay, first of all, what is a summary question? Okay, what is a summary question? A summary question in this case, okay, a summary question that you see in this case, okay, is what we call a this summary question that we're talking about is a 10-mark question that you see in the examination. And in the summary question, usually you will be given an assertion. And what is an assertion? The question will usually look something like this. Okay, if you look at this here, the question will usually look something like this. Okay, so this that you see over here, is an example of a, sorry. Okay, I don't think I can do the trackpad drawing. Okay, let me remove the trackpad. Okay, okay, so I can't do the trackpad drawing, so this is what I'm going to do. So this is example of a summary question. They will always ask you to look at all the source. Okay, they will ask you to look at all the source and ask and check with you. Then they will give you an assertion. This sentence that you see over here is an example of an assertion. Okay, so I'm going to underline this statement over here. This is an example of assertion. What this assertion means is that the statement can actually be a yes and a no. And all the sources will definitely answer this particular question. So it is always the last question, because you are supposed, after you have gone through all the different skill set for all the different questions, you are expected to use all the sources to answer this last question. And what are you supposed to do? The first thing that you need to do is that you need to check what we call the focus of the question. Okay, this is actually found on the last page of your worksheet. Okay, so this is what we call the focus of the question. And the focus of the question is basically, in this particular question, they want you to answer the following thing. 1, they want you to check whether Singapore is an attractive place to stay or not. Okay, is Singapore an attractive place to stay or not? So this is what we call the focus of the question. And all the sources will either give a yes answer, a no answer, or in some cases, we call these, there are sources which actually give both sides of the argument. We call this type of source, okay, a two-sided source, okay, a two-sided source. So sources that shows both sides of the argument, okay, both sides of the argument, we call this type of sources a two-sided source, okay? Or Ms. Chua like to give it another name. He call it a schizo source, okay, because it has two sides of the argument. Okay, so you can call that a schizo source or you can call it a two-sided source. Okay, so what does this schizo source and two-sided source actually mean? Okay, so that means that in this source, they actually have two different viewpoints. Okay, that means it answers the question on both sides of the argument. So we call it a two-sided source. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is that you need to read all the sources. Okay, and a step-by-step way of doing things is very, very simple. You study all the source and then you ask the source, do they agree or do they disagree with the statement? Do they agree or do they disagree with the statement? Okay, so do they agree or do they disagree with the statement? So in this context, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to write down whether the source agree or disagree. And the next thing that you need to look at is to focus on what is the evidence that is written in the source itself. Okay, you need to focus on the evidence. How does it support your answer? Meaning, if the source agree, do they support? What are the evidence that support? What are the evidence that doesn't support? Okay, so this first part of the argument, this whole thing that you see over here, which is the first part of the argument, is what we commonly call the first step that we are looking at. Okay, so this is the first step that we are looking at. And that will be able to help you to gain a maximum of what we call, in terms of the mark scheme, this will help you to gain a yes and no answer, and that is already 8 marks of your answers. Okay, I will talk about this later. Okay, how are we going to get the extra 2 marks? Okay, how are we going to get the extra 2 marks for this? So I'm going to focus on this later when we come back. So now let's look at the question. So question is, do foreign professionals find Singapore an attractive place to live in or to work in? How far do you agree? So if I was given a statement like this, okay, in the examination, that means the sources, okay, the sources that agree, okay, what will happen is that if the sources agree, it means that Singapore is attractive. And if I don't agree, okay, do not agree, that means that the sources shows that Singapore is not attractive. Okay, so far so good. Okay, so far so good. Now, when I say that Singapore is attractive, that means that there must be some form of what we call, if you say attractive, that means that it must have some things that is positive. Okay, something good that the people are attracted to. So we call them what we call pull factors. Okay, something that you learn in your Sec 1. So this idea about, is there something like what is good, what is positive? Is there something like what we call a pull factor? If it's not attractive, that means that it must be something negative, something bad, okay, something not very favorable, or there's some form of what we call a negative outcome, okay, negative outcome. So because it's negative outcome, okay, therefore it is, or what we call, there are push factors, okay, push factor, therefore it is not attractive. Okay, so far so good. Okay, now let's look at the questions now. Let's look at the sources. Okay, if you look at the question, now that you understand what is agree and disagree, sources A, B, C, and D will be able to give you both sides of the argument. And the first step that you have to do is to go source by source. I repeat again, go source by source. Do not, I repeat, do not try to answer this question by looking at, for example, some of you will think that, oh, Mr. Why do I write all the yes answer first, then or the agree answer first, then the disagree? Because in the examination, because this is the last question, there are situations when you may not be able to finish both sides of the viewpoint. So it's actually safer to write down source by source. I guarantee to you, by the time you reach source B or source C, you will have already covered both sides of the argument. Okay, now to do analysis of source, I need you to remember these 3 things called P, E, and E. What does the P and E stand for? The P stands for your perspective. Okay, that means that you're actually answering the question. Okay, you're answering the question that was given to you. We call this a P. Okay, so this is what we call answering a question. Now, In this case, the question is, do you agree or do you disagree? Okay, so that is answering the question. So answering the question means I agree or I disagree. And your agreement or you disagree is because the source either supports or do not support. Okay, so far, does it make sense to you? So I agree to the statement because the source supports. I do not agree with the statement because the source do not support. Okay, so this is the answering of the P. Okay, so this is the first thing that we're talking about, perspective. Now, the next thing, the E in the is called evidence. In the examination, you need to provide actual quotation, okay, actual quotation from the source. I need to see actual quotes, okay, from the source. And if you are looking at a cartoon, okay, or maybe something like a chart or even a table, I'm looking at something called a description, so-called the actual detail, okay? So what you actually see from the source. So these are things like, for example, relating to things like maybe political cartoon, okay, or maybe it could be a chart, okay, and you are actually explaining what is inside the content itself. Okay, so this is what we call evidence. And the last one is the last E, which is your explanation. And why is this explanation important? This explanation that we're talking about, and I'm going to put an asterisk over here. This is the most important thing. The explanation has to be, okay, has to be, okay, I'm going to change it to another color for you. So the explanation over here must answer this part over here, which means you must be able to tell me, so the detailed explanation of the content, okay, that means based on the content, does it show that it's negative? Because it's negative, therefore Singapore is not attractive or to foreigners, or because it's positive, therefore Singapore is attractive to foreigners. So far, so good. Okay, so why is it that Mr. Ng has created this table for you? This table is exactly what we've been talking about. This is your P. This is your first E. This is your second E. Okay, so this is your first P. This is your, then the other side is your both E's. Okay, so far so good. Am I going too slow or am I going too fast? I think the pace is pretty much what I'm doing in class. Okay, so this is the next thing that I want to go through with you. I want you now to take a look at source A. Okay, now I want you to take out source A now. We're going to do step by step. I'm going to guide you with source A. Then after that, we're going to do I'm going to share with you the answers for source B, C, and D. Okay, then that means that Mr. will pause for a while. And what I want you to do is that I want you to jot down the to work on it online. Then after that, we'll go through the answers the last 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, let's start off with the first one. Let's look at source A. Okay, for those of you who are reading source A now, source A is actually from a young professional who have been working, okay, and he was actually giving a bit of advice to another foreign professional. And he says that, oh, I was very young and I came to Singapore with my pay. This is found on page 145. And with my current salary of more than 5,000, I can barely save 1,000 with everything. Price to cripple your wallet. My friend chose to remain in the hometown and they earn less than me, but they live in posh apartment, have servants and take vacation. My Singapore dream has turned into a living nightmare and blah, blah, blah. Everything is just hype and nothing as much compared to the bigger country. So obviously, from the statement that you have or from the evidence I've given you, it's quite clear that this source does not support that Singapore is attractive. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do now, okay, first thing, on the first table, you need to tell me, does it support or it don't support? So the whole idea is that this source doesn't support. Because it doesn't support, that means that I don't agree with it. I don't agree with the statement. Read the question again. The question asks you, how far do you agree? Okay, how far do you agree? Which means I want to know your point of view. So the question is, how far do you agree? Means I agree. I agree because source A agree, or I disagree because source A do not agree or do not support. Okay, so please answer it correctly. Okay, very important. The minute you say the source agree, but you did not quote this very important statement over here, then I'm very, very sorry, the whole answer is wrong. Okay, so far so good. Okay, so once you have found out, when you have made a claim like this, obviously you already have the evidence. So what are the evidence that you pick up? Okay, I'm going to show you what is it that I have picked up. So the first thing, he says that my rented HDB flat costs an arm and leg. And there's another statement, I can barely save 1,000 every month with everything in Singapore priced to cripple your wallet. So that means that I'm going to, based on this evidence over here, this is your evidence, this is the quotation that I pick up. Based on the evidence over here, I must show something that is a negative outcome. So that means that it's not attractive. So what is the negative outcome? The negative outcome is that there is high cost of living, or it is very, very expensive, or it is very unaffordable. This is a negative outcome. Therefore, Singapore is not attractive. Okay, so this is a very important thing. I cannot emphasize this again. Okay, this is very, very important because you are using the content and you are trying to explain the content to me. Why is it that the source do not support or do not agree? So far, so good. So far, so good. Okay. Okay, you can actually indicate and you can tell me whether is it okay or do you need me to go faster. There is actually some points over there. You don't have to talk. There is some click buttons for you on the side of your screen. You can actually click yes, no, or Mr. Can you go faster or can you go slower? So that I have a sensing of how to actually gauge my lesson. Okay, guys, is everything so far okay? So this is source A. So source A is no, I do not agree with the statement as the source do not support. Okay, or the source do not agree. So quote the evidence, and then I want you to link the evidence by explaining it. And the link must always be focusing on answering the question, okay? Which is, in this case, the question that we're talking about means, is it attractive? So because high cost of living is make it unaffordable, so Singapore is not attractive. Okay, so far so good. So far so good. Okay, this is what I need you to do now, guys. Now on my digital clock is 12:53. Okay, on my clock is 12:53. I am going to let you look at the next three sources and I want you to do the same thing. Okay, I want you to do the same thing now. I'm going to give you 15 minutes to do so. 1-5. 5 minutes per source. If you have not read it, plenty of time for you to read and to quote the answers and make sure you do the PEE. So 12:55, okay, 12:53 to so we will finish, and I want you to do it by 10 minutes is so by 1:05. Okay, 1:05. I will go back. I will come back again. I will stop the sharing now. Okay, stop the share. Then after that, you can do your work. Keep the computer on and keep your laptop on first, and then we will go through the next bit. Okay, we'll go through the next bit in 15 minutes time. Okay, 15 minutes time. So 1:05, I will go. I will appear again. I'll go online. I'm going to take a short break. Okay, so now it's your turn to do your work. Okay, clear. Okay, you can continue. You can start now. Okay. Okay, guys, can you hear me? Guys, can you hear me? Good. Okay, thanks, Brian. Okay, this is what we're going to do now. The next part of the lesson, I'm going to continue. I'm going to share with you. I know that you have been doing, you've already done something at least you should have already touched on the B and the C sources. Okay, they're actually pretty straight cut. Remember, in the actual examination, you will not get only 4 sources. You will most probably you have to look at all 5 to 6 sources. So you're actually 2 sources short. So the amount of time you need for this particular question is maybe about 20 minutes. So you roughly can gauge yourself how much time you need in order to complete this particular question. Okay, so let me share again the screen. Okay, and let's go through the answers together. Okay, let's look at source B now. Okay, source B is a very interesting situation. Exactly what I told you the last time. If you have a source that is textual sources, it's very easy to find out whether is it a yes or no, depending on what the question is. Now, in this case, Singapore is talking about this whole idea about it's a 2004 ranking chart, and Singapore position is placed is the best quality of life for the expat. So source B, it is a table, and if you look at the table, Singapore is actually ranked second. Okay, for those of you who are looking at it, I'm going to show you the answers very quickly. Okay, Singapore is ranked second. Okay, well, it ranks second in the country, the best quality of life for expats. And what does that mean? It means that foreigners feel that our quality of life must be very high. Okay, that means there's high quality of life. Okay, if you're ranked very, very highly, that means our quality of life must be very, very high. So we must have very high standard of living. Okay, we have high standard of living. I want you to take note of this. High standard of living is different from high cost of living. Okay, high standard of living and high cost of living is very, very different. High standard of living usually comes with a cost of living. But however, the emphasis here is high standard of living. High standard means that life is actually very, very comfortable. Okay, life is actually very, very comfortable. So if life is comfortable, that means it must be attractive. So again, if you look at the content, source B, your answer should be this. I agree with the statement because the source supports the statement. So far, so good. I agree with the statement because the source supports the statement. And how do you know that? First, evidence. The evidence is Singapore is ranked second. I'm quoting details from the source, or I'm picking up details from the source. From the second of being the best quality of life, it means that Singapore must have a very high standard of living. So far, so good. Okay, pretty straight cut, right? Your source summary question is actually one of the easiest as long as you follow the structure very, very clearly. The only problem that your seniors are always having, and I want to caution all of you, is that because this is the last question, by the time they do this, they don't have enough time. So they end up doing a very slip-slop work. As long as this part, which is your number 2 over here, as long as this part on the so-called the explanation is not done properly, this source explanation is 0. So I go back to the answer scheme again. After looking at 2 sources, you are already getting 5 marks. Can you see that? You're looking at 2 sources, you're already getting 5 marks. Okay, so let me bring you back here again. Okay, so when you have 2 sources, you're actually getting 5 marks because you're actually doing explanation on both sides of the argument. Kira, stop looking at the window. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. Okay, let's look at source C then. Okay, then let's look at source C. Now, if you look at source C is also a very straight cut question. Okay, it's an opinion about a migrant on why he chose to live in Singapore. Obviously, if he chooses to live in Singapore, chances are he's going to say positive things. So the source, I agree with the statement because that's what the question wants you to do, as the source supports the statement. Okay, so this is again a positive stance. And again, you have to do the following 2 things. You need to give me the evidence and you need to give me the content. Okay, this one, sorry, you need to give me the evidence and you need to give me the content. Okay, so examples like this. I'm actually doing it in, there are actually two sets of examples that you can use. And I think most of you may have already done so. Okay, there are two sets of examples that you can use. Okay, so one set of example is this. You can pick up this evidence and say, oh, it mentioned that it's a safe and stable financial hub. So what does this? This means that there is economic growth, or there is some form of prosperity, or there is some form of jobs or opportunities. Okay, so all these things are positive outcome. So that's why foreigners comes in. Make sense to you so far? Okay, so the idea that this statement, this evidence, the safe and stable hub implies that there is promise of opportunity, that promise of growth, that promise of prosperity. All these things are what we call the evidence that you can use to pick up for this particular statement. So in this case, for all this, this is your explanation that we're talking about. Or you mention something like this. Some of you may have picked up another set of evidence. Okay, you can just pick one of them. You don't have to take both of them. Just one will do. One PEE is good enough. But if in case you pick up something like this, oh, they mentioned about this good network of roads, ample housing, and good school. So this whole idea about good network of school means that there is what we call well connected and high accessibility. So this shows high quality of okay, this shows high quality of living, okay, which makes them attractive to the foreigners. Okay, I'm going to pause for a short while. Okay, now in case you didn't manage to copy all this thing, I will be putting the video, the recording of this video later, and I'll send it to all of you. It will be a YouTube link, and you can actually take a look at it. So don't get too caught up if you realize that I can't copy it down. My typing is very, very slow. Don't worry too much about it. What is most important is that you need to understand exactly what you're supposed to do. Okay? Now, so you have one no, two yeses. Up to this point of time, if you have done all the PEE properly, meaning you have answered the question, you have provided evidence, you have explained and the evidence to link to what the question wants you to do, you have already gotten your explanation mark. And in the examination, the teachers will be looking out for all these three things. I will be looking at which source you are using. Did you answer the question? Did you pick the evidence? Did you explain the evidence? And when I mean by explanation, another word of caution, you cannot be paraphrasing, you cannot be using whatever content there is. This explanation must be an extension. Okay, I'm going to write this down. You can jot this down for yourself. It must be an extension. That means safe and stable hub. So what? Oh, the extension is prosperity. Extension is job or opportunity. Understand? It cannot be, oh, because it's safe and stable, or it's safe and stable, therefore it's attractive. That's not good enough. You need to explain the safe and stable. And this extension I'm referring to is usually to answer this question called, so what? So what if I have a stable and stable hub, financial hub? So what if I have a good network of road? So what if I have a good school? That means, in fact, if you pick on this evidence, some of you may have already thought about, hey, Mr. Can I write down if good school that will attract people with young children to come here to utilize the education system? Like some of you, your foreigners who come in to learn about our education, to have a good education in Singapore, that will attract people to come. That will make Singapore attractive to foreigners, especially those with young family or those with school-going children. Understand? So far, so good. Okay, good. Now, I think you'll find D very interesting, right? I think most of you have already done D. Okay, I'm just going to cut the so-called the mystery for all of you. D is what we call a two-sided source. Okay, D is what we call a two-sided source. This source show both sides of the argument. So in the examination, what happened when you have this? If you are smart enough, you use the one source is good enough for you to get your 5 marks, because you are actually showing both sides of the argument. That means you are actually doing this thing that I'm talking about. You are actually doing the yes and no. Can you see that? One source, you're actually doing a yes and no. This source is very interesting. This is by a foreign professional personal blog on her experience of living in Singapore in 2003. So there are two sides of the argument. I'm going to show you both sides of the answers. I know some of you are copying it down, but I want you to pay attention as we go along. Okay, first, he don't agree. I don't agree, or I disagree because the source do not support. So you need to find evidence that shows that the source is not supporting. So for example, cost of living. Okay, so I'm using quotation. I'm using two sets of quotation over here. In the examination, there's no need to do that. One set is good enough. So the quotation that I pick up is cost of living is a big problem. Rent is shooting through the wall or through the roof, and cost of even basic items like grocery and public transport are expensive. So what does this tell you? It tells you the same situation that we talk about. The cost of living or the cost of living is very, very high. So that will, because the cost is very, very high, it will affect their standard of living adversely. So that means that they cannot live very, very well. So therefore, it is not attractive. Okay, so this shows that the source do not support the statement. Therefore, I disagree. Okay, therefore, I disagree. Okay, so this schizo source or two-sided source also have an agree perspective. It also have an agree perspective. I agree with the statement because the source supports the statement. And what is it that you need to do? Next, you have to tell me evidence like this. Oh, what is good is probably the healthcare. It gives expensive, give me peace of mind. Okay, so this idea about that peace of mind and what is good about Singapore is obviously something that's positive. So what did he say? It says that if he says that what is good in Singapore is education system and childcare, that means that the childcare and the education things must be of high quality and standard. So this statement over here, the high quality, okay, high quality and standard, that will make people want to come to Singapore. So this is where the agree part came along. Okay, so this source have both agree and disagree. Okay, so far so good. So far so good. Okay, I know I'm losing all of you because it's not easy to have a 1 hour lesson with me on the computer screen. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the last bit. So up till now, if you look at all the sources, you have already done these three things. You realize that you have actually done all these three things. You have talked about the yes and no, and they are all supported by valid source use. And then, of course, some of you are saying, but Mr. How do I write the answer? You write the answer, you just put all these three things together into a paragraph. So each source, one paragraph. So I disagree with the statement because source A disagree, then quote the evidence, and this shows that, and of course link it up. This shows that there's high cost of living is very expensive and so on and so forth. Therefore, Singapore is not attractive. So this is one paragraph. This is another paragraph, and then you can move on and talk about this. So for D, you can split it up into two paragraphs, one for the disagree and one for the agree. So you go source by source, one source, one paragraph. So in the paragraph itself, you should have your perspective, your evidence, and finally your explanation. Okay, now the next one, the next part is this thing over here. Okay, let me go back to this. Next thing is that you need to do the following thing. You need to check the claim that was being made in the source. This will give you your additional 2 marks. So what do you mean by checking the claim? Checking the claim means that you can use different methods. One, you can check on one of the sources to verify or to challenge the information. Now, this is why Mr. Ng has been telling you that you need to read widely. Understand now? I know some of you say, but Mr. Ng is only for 2 marks. Do we really have to go into that? Now, if you want to get that 2 marks and you have a source-based question that is in this context, then you need to use content to verify. So what do you need to do? There are altogether 4 sources over there. Okay, I'm going to give you an example of how it can be done. Okay, show you an example of how it can be done. So for example, you can use method number 1. Okay, this is method number 1 that I want you to take note of. Method number 1 is I want you to use your contextual knowledge. And what is the contextual knowledge supposed to do? The contextual knowledge is to add on, okay, to what the source says. So this is what we call that verifying, or what we call reliability using contextual knowledge. Okay, that is the approach for method number 1. So this is how you can do. After you have written down source C, okay, I agree with what source C say, or I agree because source C support. Then after you take out the evidence, you can say, oh, and from what I have learned from my textbook, this is what happened. Singapore GDP did increase from 41 to 71,000. That means that because Singapore has ample job opportunity and we actually have consistent investment. So this is to supplement what was found in the source itself. Okay, and of course, some of you are very, very worried, Mr. Ng, does that mean that I have to study and learn all this content by heart? Like I say, it's always help to read widely because you never know what type of topic will come out and what type of question will come out to help you and to let you answer the question like this. That's why every day when we talk about during our SS lesson, I always share with all of you some interesting anecdotal stories, some things that's happening around the world and so on and so forth. We talk about people like Trump. We talk about how Americans manage their situation, or even how America, the type of relationship they have with the world and so on and so forth. All these things, by reading widely, using with the papers or through media, you actually get a better understanding about the event. And in the event that you get a source-based question that's related to what you have learned, you can actually add that on to get that extra +2 marks. Okay, so you only need to use one source. Of course, if your answers are not good enough, meaning the evidence is not very, very strong, you can also add in another source, but it's perfectly fine if you want to do just one source. So from what I've learned, Singapore housing price is about this. It says that it's very expensive, right? Oh, I learned that, oh, housing price is about 26,000 per square meter. But in places like Indonesia, it's only 2,000 per square meter. So obviously, those people who are in Indonesia, they come to Singapore, they work, they go back. If they are in Indonesia, they can afford to buy houses and everything. But in Singapore, you can't do that. Understand? So that is why this is what we call to add on to the content itself. So this is your +2. Okay. So far, so good. So that is one method to get your +2 marks. So 8 + 2, 10. That's the maximum. Okay. So 5 marks for one source, one pair of source, then 6, 7, 8 is usually for the next 3 sources that you use. So roughly you'll get about, if you are doing all the sources correctly, both sides of the argument, you should be able to get around 7 to 8 marks easily. Okay, now the next one is your homework that I want you to do. Okay, next method. Okay, method number 2. There is another method to get your +2. And the other method that you can use is this thing called reliability. Now I hope you understand why Mr. Ng, before the holidays, before the full home-based learning, I've been teaching you about this skill called reliability. Now, what do you need to do? You need to tell me, I disagree with the statement, the source disagree, but I think it's not very reliable, or I think it is very reliable. And how do you check the reliability of it? You cannot do cross-referencing already. Okay, you cannot do cross-referencing because you're using all the sources. It doesn't make sense. You say, oh, I think source C is not reliable because it is source A says otherwise. You can't do that because you're using all the sources. So this method of cross-referencing to other sources or contextual knowledge cannot work. So for those of you who can still remember, if you cannot do this, then what is the other way that you have to do? Can you remember this thing? Do you remember this? Some of you are, I know you're, I can't see your reaction. That's what I don't like about all this Zoom lesson. But CAP stands for critical analysis of provenance, linking to content. So I think the source is reliable, or I think the source is not reliable because there is something not quite right with the source because of who this person is and how he say and what he say. Okay, so that's one method. You have to do critical analysis of provenance. Who he is, what he say, does that make him unreliable? The second thing that you can look at is to focus on the tone of the source. Okay, and the tone of the source is to look at the choice of words and the perspective that the writer is taking. Is he biased? Is he one-sided? Or is he biased? Is he one-sided? Or is he trying to present a balanced view? Okay, so the third one that you can think about is, of course, is there a purpose? This is something that we've been talking about in our lesson. And if you're not sure what it is, this thing is also found in your textbook, page 147. Okay, so what do I want you to do? Sorry, what do I want you to do? Now, I want you to look to practice using method number 2. Okay, because you have not learned about the content, it's not fair for you to do this, but this is some example. But what I want you to do is to use the easier way, which is to talk about reliability. So I want you to read up on page 147, and I really taught you how to go about doing reliability. What I want you to do is that I want you to read up for all the sources. Okay, check all the sources, check all the sources. Okay, I want you to check all sources, and then for every single source, okay, for every source, I want you to ascertain, okay, I want you to ascertain whether the source is reliable or not. That means, is source A reliable? Why is it reliable, or why is it not reliable? Can you use your 1, 2, or 3 to tell me whether is it reliable or not reliable? Then look at source B. Is the chart reliable? Why is it reliable? Or why is it not reliable? Look at 1, 2, and 3 again. And finally, C and D. So I want you to do that for every single source. And that will be your extension activity for today. Okay? Clear so far? Okay, I've exceeded my time. Okay, this is what is going to happen for today's lesson. Okay, I will be putting up the video online for all of you to retrieve it. But like I say, this whole entire thing is for you to understand what you're supposed to do for today's lesson. So I hope that you understand what is going on for today's lesson. Then after that, when we will be doing more practices. Today is really just to get your hands dirty in a sense. get a little bit of head start on how to do about summary question. When I see you back after the holidays, hopefully I will give you more practice on this and we'll do it more in class and I can have a sensing of how you are doing. Okay, so I've come to the end of the lesson. It's been great seeing some of you. Okay, I hope that you have understand what is going on. Go and take a look at the video at the end of it. Okay, then if you have any question, you can message me or you can actually put it on the either on the class Padlet. Okay, and for those of you who have not submitted your SRQ, just registering your name is not. Okay, Ziwei, please go and do it. First one I open is yours, and I was so disappointed. I see a blank piece of work. Okay, so Ziwei, please go and do it. Okay, so that's what. So please go and finish up the SRQ that was given to you in the previous lesson. Okay, I'm going to end the meeting now. Okay, so please go and do your work. Okay, rest well, and I'll see you in the next session. Okay, you can now exit the group. Okay, I'll see you again.